I, a 27-year-old female, want to share a crazy situation that I'm currently dealing with. I never thought that I'd have to deal with something like this before, since I thought my family wasn't like this, but I guess we all have that one person who can be insane. Some time ago, my grandparents passed away and left me a small plot of land. I don't want to dox myself, but we live pretty close to a big city on the West Coast. On my 21st birthday, they told me about a small piece of land that they owned and asked me what I would do with it if it came to me. I mentioned that I always wanted to run my own business and that I would open up a nail salon. They told me that they would give it to me once they passed, and were very happy that I planned to use it for something that I was passionate about. They even promised to leave me some money to help me start the business. This conversation happened about 6 years ago. Just as they promised, when the will was read, I was so glad to see that they had remembered our talk. They even remembered the money, which came close to about $80,000. I was honestly shocked and didn't expect it to be that much. I thought it would be closer to about, $15,000 or $20,000 at the most, based on the kind of lifestyle that they lived. This would really make things easier for me. Ever since that conversation 6 years ago, I had been planning how I would go about building my business. It wasn't a large plot of land, so I had to consult people who could help me design something small, but trendy. What I am trying to say is that I had taken my time in really researching and doing all the prep work that goes into starting a new business. This meant that I was very much able to start construction very quickly. Enter my aunt, a classic Karen. I never saw her that much growing up, but she was your typical uptight, middle-aged woman that always wore a face that looked like she was smelling something foul. The moment she realized that I started actively working on the land, she decided to freak out and go banshee mode. I don't know why she didn't raise any objections earlier when she knew that the plot of land was left to me. I guess she thought that I would just abandon and forget about it. She really didn't expect that I would start building something on it so soon. Karen seemed to think that because she was the eldest child of the grandparents, the claim to the land was hers by default, and it would be she who then decided what to do with it. I don't know where she got this ridiculous idea from, which completely ignored the legally binding will of her parents. She would keep alternating her position. Sometimes she would say it outright belonged to her, while other times she would argue that I needed to share the land with her or respect tradition and give it to her entirely because she needs it more than I do. I had let it slip that I wanted to use it for a business. I told her that my grandparents, her parents, had promised me the land years ago and that I was sorry that this fact upset her, but I had all the paperwork to prove it. She wouldn't listen. She was convinced that I was trying to cheat her out of her rightful inheritance. She tried to contact my parents, thinking that they would convince me to give it to her, but my dad, in polite terms, told her that this wasn't going to happen. It's important to note that my parents live in a different state, and I'm an only child, so it's just been me dealing with my aunt all alone here. On one particular occasion, my aunt and I had a big argument where we both said some pretty insulting words to each other. Ever since then, it seemed like I had lit a fire in her. She started a mission of trying to sway other members of our family to her side. I would realize this when I met some of them. They would tell me that she kept trying to bring up old memories of her parents, trying to play on their emotions, and talk about how she was so lonely and wished somebody would help her out. She made it seem like I was being cruel and selfish for not sharing family property. It's been really tough. I know she's trying to use her age and seniority in the family to bully me into doing what she wants. She's a pretty popular person in our town and has started to use her friendships with local officials to try and halt the construction process. I found out that she had been making phone calls and sending emails to whoever she can, trying to get people to put pressure on me. This was a nightmare since I've always been an introverted person and I wasn't used to this level of chaos in my life. Well, one day, she came over to the construction site and started yelling at me and the workers, saying that they needed to stop immediately. She created a huge scene, and several people on the street and neighboring shops watched her yelling about how I was trying to steal her land by illegally building on it. I called my dad, even as she was yelling at me, and told him what was happening and that I was going to call the police on her. He urged me not to do so, saying that no matter what, she was family and to try to find another way. I was pretty annoyed and I hung up. I didn't know what to do, so I just left the site. Thankfully, construction continued happening since I made sure that everything was being done legally and that I had all necessary documents and permits in order. She was furious that it wasn't stopping despite her trying everything she could to halt it. It almost felt like she had a personal vendetta against me more than she needed the land. She came by my house a few days later and started talking to my neighbors, asking them if they knew what I was doing and how I was cheating an elderly woman out of her land. I pulled out my phone and started to record what she was saying. Oh boy, this triggered her big time. I realized that she absolutely hated being filmed, so I decided to do exactly that. I started filming every single interaction when she came around to hound me. This caused her to ease up, and I didn't see her for some time. However, she was still up to her craziness in the background. I started to notice that some of my friends and relatives were beginning to sympathize with her. They started leaving comments that my aunt was older and might actually need the land more than I did, especially since I was just trying my hand at starting a business. I'm never making the mistake of telling people my plans. Others gave me condescending remarks like, "You are a smart girl. Can't you figure out other ways of making money without troubling your aunt so much?" Nobody seemed to care that the land was legally left to me. I knew I had to do something to set the record straight, so I sat down with a close friend and we brainstormed over a few days about how to do this. In the end, we decided to go public. I shared the entire story, leaving out no details on social media. The post basically went a bit viral, and we even got a small news channel that came by to report on it. To say that Karen was unhappy would be an understatement of the century. In the post that went viral, I also shared the videos I recorded of her manic-like rage at me. Yeah, they were not flattering and quickly ruined the poor old lady shtick that she had been fooling everyone with. She started threatening me, saying that if I didn't take it down, she would hire a lawyer and file for defamation. This is BS because I was only sharing the truth. I hadn't lied about anything. She even went on to suddenly claim that my parents' property was also hers, which was hilarious to hear. I told her to go ahead and try because no lawyer with half a brain would take her case. She spat in my face. I smiled at her and told her that she was done. I had been filming everything on my phone. I called the police right away, and long story short, she was arrested. That night, I had a glass of wine and watched a movie with my friends before falling asleep. It felt nice to celebrate a victory over my aunt from hell. The next morning, I woke up to several missed calls and multiple text messages from relatives on her side, demanding to know why my aunt was in jail. They said that I needed to bail her out immediately. I hung up, put my phone on silent, and went right back to sleep. Later that day, I received a call from the police station informing me that she had been released on bail. Turns out her ex-husband came through for her. Good for her. When my dad called, I knew he wanted me to drop charges, but I was hesitant to let her off the hook so easily. I knew that pressing charges would only escalate the situation and potentially create even more problems for me in the future. I thought of a plan and I reached out to my aunt and suggested that we meet to talk things over at a cafe we both knew. I mentally prepared myself for how things would go and started recording audio before I entered the place just in case she would say something that I could use against her. My state is a single-party consent state. When I entered, I could see that my aunt from hell was sitting alone in the corner. I sort of expected her ex-husband to be there as well, but I guess not. Basically, I made it clear that if she kept trying to harass me about land even one more time, I would be pressing charges. On the other hand, I told her that if she agreed to respect the wishes of my grandparents' will, I would forget everything that happened as long as she never spoke to me again. She was clearly trying to think about how she could one-up me, but I guess she realized how delicate her situation was. The short jail time seemed to have put some perspective into her, and I could see the cogs turning in her head as she grudgingly agreed. Even after all this, she had the audacity to ask me for a percentage of my income from the business once it started to function. I asked her if she was joking. She got up and left, and I never heard from her again. It's been almost a year since I saw my aunt, and my nail salon just finished its first month. I was thrilled to see it even turn a profit. A small one, but still. The entire experience, though traumatic, felt like I had completed a psychological training course. I've become a much tougher person because of my aunt. I'm a lot more assertive and no longer allow people to take advantage of me. I guess that's one thing I can be grateful to her for. So, when I was 18, I was working at a call center that handled debit, credit card fraud, and identity theft related issues for a bank. I have a lot of fun stories, but I'll never forget the one time that some woman called me a racist and accused me of discrimination just because I wouldn't break federal law for her. A bit of background information. According to federal law, even if you open an account online, you have to provide documentation that proves your identity in order to prevent scammers and criminals from making fake accounts and messing everything up for the bank and the customers. This is a very basic summary of the law, and I don't remember all the details of the law, so this is the best explanation that I have to summarize it for context. It also provides a way for the bank to identify someone posing as you should someone ever try to impersonate you. But that wasn't the main point. As much as I hated it when we had people call in because their accounts were on hold due to not providing proof of identity, always landed in my department because everyone just assumed it was an ITA issue even though it wasn't. One night, I got a call from a lady who was very irate and was already yelling when I got on the call. One of the agents from a sister site had decided to cold transfer the abusive customer to my department, because why not? And they never told her that they were transferring her in the first place. Great start to an already crappy call, but it was about to get so much worse. As soon as the lady heard me talking, she was already spitting accusations of discrimination and racism, saying that we were just putting her accounts on hold because she was a black woman who worked hard for her money and our white supremacist organization didn't like it. I might be white, but I've never been racist, even though my family is. I'm happily engaged to a Hispanic man and always remember to treat people out of respect because I really don't care about race drama. I'm also an introvert with severe social anxiety, so I don't really like being around people in general, especially after being bullied all my life. She immediately started saying that if I don't unfreeze her accounts so she could pay her bills, she was going to sue me, the agent from the other site, the company, everyone. She even called me every name under the sun and started telling me that she thought white people should be slaves to blacks because of our past. I'm not even going to comment on this one since my family is mostly Irish, and, again, I don't care about race drama. I did everything I could to calm her down, and asked to put her on hold for 1 minute so I could review the account. She told me that I'd better hurry up, and I put her on hold so I could see what was going on. This woman had recently opened the accounts and never verified her identity with the bank using her documentation. Again, it's federal law. And even if I did have the ability to unfreeze the accounts, I could have been fined hundreds of thousands of dollars and faced potential jail time. Now, say what you will about white people, but facing jail and fines that I could never afford was nowhere near worth proving I wasn't racist and had nothing to do with the issue in the first place. When I got back on the phone, I started explaining the issue to the woman and even tried to help by asking if she had sent in her documentation as requested by the bank. She actually calmed down a little and answered the follow-up questions. I had in order to help her understand the situation a bit better, and I was able to locate the documentation that she had sent in. Here's the kicker. She had sent it just minutes before calling in, and it was already outside of business hours on a Friday. I explained that I could see her documentation had arrived, but I had to explain that because she had sent it outside regular business hours, it wouldn't reach the back office until the following business day. And it would take another 3 to 5 business days to review. She again launched into this racist rant that I was just doing this because I saw that she was black and must hate black people, then demanded to speak to a supervisor. At this point, my patience was worn out, and I was so desperate to get out of this situation. I called my manager over and was about to explain everything when the manager took my mouse from my hand and hung up on the customer. He informed me that he had passed by and heard some racist slurs coming from my headset and jumped on to listen to the call to see what was going on, since I was usually pretty good about diffusing situations like this on my own. He told me that he was impressed that I hadn't hung up on her after the first set of slurs, but he told me that he refused to let me get yelled at like that again, especially when I was still trying to be nice to a racist Karen like that. As much as I hate to say it, the call didn't end there. Karen got a hold of an agent from the sister location and actually got them to unfreeze the account. On top of that, she got the agent to file a report against me, and the agent even stated that I was the one who unfroze the accounts. Bottom line, corporate was out for blood, and because of that agent, they were out for mine. My manager managed to convince them that I was innocent by playing the call back for the higher up managers in the office. And I didn't find out until a few days later when corporate wanted to verify some information with me. I was left alone, but I decided that it would be better to start looking around for a new job, especially with the fact that I almost got hate crime charges pressed against me on top of charges for breaking federal law.